dear members of the choir, dear family, and dear Martin. First, I want to extend you all a most warm welcome to our humble yet beautiful little church here. My name is Father Patrick Mackin, and I've only known Martin for a few months, a few of the past months. There were only a few, but I would dare say the best few in his life. I am truly honored to offer the funeral mass today. And although my words cannot take away the pain of loss in your hearts, I do hope that they, along with the Holy Mass that is offered, will add a degree of consolation to you all. I want to also thank the choir. Last night you sang beautifully at the wake. The choir from West Covina, I'm told, LA. You've come up here to offer your voices, to show your love, your support. Also, on behalf of all the priests here present, Father Asher and all the other priests, my comrades, we priests, we say this with a truly grateful heart. We smile as we see so many of you today in our church. So many of you, from the young to the old, so many men and women, and perhaps there are even non-Catholics here present. To you all, we welcome you. We are glad you're here. And Martin is also glad you are here. The only thing we ask is that for Holy Communion, that those only approach the communion rail who are baptized Catholic and in the state of grace. But other than that, our doors are open to the world. Especially in these times when we see in the world such little faith. The faith in the world today can be compared to a little candle which is burning away, nearly gone. And yet it's still there. At the beginning of this sermon, I wanted to pose a question to you, which hopefully can be answered by the end. It's a simple question. Why are you here? Why have you come today to this Requiem Mass? Perhaps some would say, Father, I'm here to show my last respects. I'm here, Father, to say goodbye to my brother, to my uncle, to my father, to my cousin, or to my friend, Martin. But my dear friends, if it was only to say goodbye, we could have done that last night at the funeral home. And if it was only to show our respect, we could still do that this afternoon at the cemetery. But no, we are here for an entirely different reason. The priest wears black. There is sitting on the altar there a chalice, a host. Over there on the other side, there's some wine and a little cruet. The elements are ready for the holy sacrifice, the Mass of all times. And that is why we are here. But of course, we are also here. The only reason we are here is to pray for our friend, Martin. After all, with a nickname like Martin the Dragon, when I first met Martin, I heard his nickname, and I thought to myself, he must have lived an interesting life to have such a nickname. He was the boy from Vietnam in our minds, all the way from a country far away. Hearing the stories of his youth growing up there in Vietnam, the difficult conditions, I learned from him that he had to learn to fight at an early age, to be tough in the streets. He said, Father, otherwise you would not survive. Hearing the stories of how the Nguyen family, in fact, escaped the communists of Vietnam who were occupying the country in order to find freedom makes me blush. Makes me truly blush when I think of how easy my childhood was. To hear stories of how little boys and girls had to climb and hide on boats and pray to God that they would not be discovered. Each and every one of us Americans hear these stories. It breaks our hearts. But through all that sacrifice and through all that effort, the Nguyen family came here, settled down here in San Jose, Little Saigon. We are blessed. And here, Martin and his family, they found freedom. They found freedom. And Martin and you all know what it means to be free. And anyone who knew Martin, as I've heard many of your stories, would say that there's two words that you could easily describe him. Two words that were so dear to his heart, even sacred. And that is family and friends. If you were either, that meant something to Martin that he would never forget. If you were his friend, as we priests became in the last few months of his life, it is something that you knew. Yes, but for Martin, there was another word that he had to discover. Besides the family and besides the friends, there was another word that Martin had to discover through his life, in which Almighty God, in his providence, slowly disposes the heart of a man through his years of childhood, through his adulthood, through his mistakes, to discover this word. And when you discover this word, it is unlike any word. And that is the word faith. Without faith, a man like the size of Martin is going to get in trouble. I smile when I think of Martin, as do all the priests. He reminds me of so many of my favorite childhood movies, in fact. The childhood movies that I really enjoyed were always the ones that pictured a boy you couldn't help but love, but a boy who just got in trouble. But in the end, the boy was won by a good priest, perhaps. Such movies as I think of Angels with Dirty Faces. I think of another movie called The Fighting Father Dunn. And then there's Boys Town. They all have the same theme. A boy who otherwise would have been good, through difficult conditions in life, made some mistakes, but ended on a good note. Yeah, Martin was very honest, very open to everybody he talked to about those mistakes. He told me many stories about his time in prison, San Quentin of all places. He told me, Father, prison makes a man hard. Every time you're there, you just want to leave, you want to escape. He said the worst moments in prison was at nighttime. He said during the day, men walked around with their chest out, tough guys. But he said at night, there was no tough guy. We were scared. I think of you, Martin, in those years. I think of your sleepless nights, tossing and turning. God planting the seeds of what would blossom forth into becoming the most beautiful faith that you can see. But regardless, he eventually got out. He eventually left that prison cell, but it wouldn't be long before Martin would end up in a room in a hospital. And it would be here that Martin would learn from the doctors that he had a heart failure. With only 20% of his heart working, Martin was now forced, for the first time in his life, to consider his death, to consider his end. But my dear friends, please look at this moment from God's eyes, the good Lord, who in the blink of an eye sees our whole life as moments that are coming closer and closer to him. And so while we wonder the mystery of evil, the mystery of sicknesses and death, through God's eyes, they are opportunities to win our hearts. It is truly the mercy of God what he did to Martin. And I would dare say